She packed her bags to move in with her male best friend and smirked. "You'll be alone forever. No one will take your side." I just nodded. Weeks later, when he kicked her out and she showed up at my family's house, my father answered the door and said, "He's not alone anymore. We've got him." The last thing she said to me as she stood in the doorway of my house, suitcase in hand, was meant to be a kill shot. It was designed to echo in the silence she was leaving behind. A final, perfect twist of the knife. "You know what your problem is, Ben?" she said, a smug, pitting smirk on her face. "You've spent your whole life trying to prove you're different from them, and you just ended up with nothing. You'll be alone forever. No one will ever take your side." She was talking about my family, and the worst part was I was terrified she was right. I didn't argue. I didn't try to stop her. I just stood there in the entryway of the house I had built with my own two hands and nodded. I watched her walk down the path to her male best friend's waiting car, get in, and drive away without a backward glance. Then I closed the door, and the silence she had promised me began. My name is Ben. I'm 37 and I own a company that designs and builds custom homes. I'm a carpenter by trade, a builder by profession. I work with my hands. I find satisfaction in creating something real and solid out of a pile of lumber and a set of blueprints. My girlfriend, Olivia, 34, had been living with me for the last 3 years. She was beautiful, charming, and deeply, fundamentally ashamed of what I did for a living. I come from a family of academics and professionals. My father is a renowned history professor at the university. My mother is a respected art historian. My older sister, Eleanor, is a partner at a major law firm. They are people who live in a world of theory, of debate, of words. I was the son, who chose sawdust and calluses, the black sheep who traded a PhD for a tool belt. They never said they were disappointed in me. Not in so many words, but I could feel it. It was there in the way my father would introduce me as someone who works in construction, his tone apologetic. It was there in the way my mother would gently suggest I change my shirt before dinner if we had guests. It was there in the endless, subtle condescension. They loved me, I think, but they didn't respect my life. Olivia saw this dynamic from day one, and she thrived on it. She loved the beautiful home I built, the financial security my business provided, but she treated my actual work like a dirty secret. When we were with her friends, she'd describe me as a property developer. When we were with my family, she would subtly align herself with them, talking about art and literature, leaving me on the outside of the conversation, the simple man who paid the bills. Her male best friend, a slick real estate agent named Greg, was the perfect embodiment of the life she thought she deserved. He wore expensive suits, drove a German car, and never had a speck of dirt under his fingernails. Their friendship had always been a little too close for comfort, full of inside jokes and late-night texts she'd hide from me. I knew something was going on, but I didn't want to believe it. The end came quickly. Greg had a spare room open up in his downtown condo, and Olivia announced she was moving in with him. She framed it as a move for her career, a chance to be closer to the city, to her clients. But we both knew what it was. She was upgrading, and as she stood there delivering her parting shot, she was leveraging my deepest insecurity against me. She had seen the way my family treated me. She had seen their quiet disapproval, and she was confident that in any dispute between us, they would see her as the sophisticated, wronged party and me as the simple, uncultured man who had let her down. She believed I was completely and utterly alone. After she left, I walked through the silent house. It felt huge and empty. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of the choices I had made. Maybe they were all right. Maybe I had chosen a lonely path. The silence was deafening. I spent the next 2 days in a fog, going to work, coming home, and just staring at the walls. On the 3rd day, I hit a wall. The loneliness was crushing. I thought about her words. no one will ever take your side. And I realized I had to know if she was right. I had to make the one call I had been avoiding for years. I picked up my phone and dialed my father. He answered on the second ring, his voice as formal and distant as ever. "Dad," I said, my own voice sounding strained. "I need to talk to you. Something's happened. Update 1. The response to my post has been overwhelming. Thank you. It's strange to find support from strangers when you feel completely cut off from your own world." That phone call with my father was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I've never been good at asking for help, especially from him. I've always felt like I had to project an image of strength and self-sufficiency to justify my life choices. I told him everything. I told him about Olivia leaving, about Greg, about the things she had said. I didn't get emotional. I just laid out the facts the way I would describe a problem on a job site. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. I braced myself for the "I told you so," for the quiet disappointment, but that's not what I got. "Where are you right now, son?" he asked, and his voice was different. The academic formality was gone, replaced by a simple, raw concern that I hadn't heard since I was a child. "I'm at home," I said. "Stay there. Your mother and I are on our way." He hung up. An hour later, my parents' car pulled into my driveway. My father got out, followed by my mother. They walked up the path, and for the first time they seemed to be looking at my house not as a piece of construction, but as my home. My father walked in, looked at the empty spaces where Olivia's things used to be. And then he looked at me. He just opened his arms and hugged me. It was a real hug, strong and solid, and it broke something open in me that had been walled off for years. My mother hugged me next, her hand on the back of my head, just like she used to do when I was a kid. We sat in the living room and we talked, really talked. I told them about the years of feeling like a disappointment, about the subtle condescension that had pushed me away. My father's face was a mask of pain. "Ben," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "we were wrong. We were so caught up in our own world, in our own definition of success, that we failed to see the incredible man you had become. We were proud of you. We were terrible at showing it." My sister Eleanor arrived a little while later. My dad must have called her. She walked in, took one look at my face, and her usual sharp, lawyerly demeanor just melted. She hugged me and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Ben. She was never good enough for you." That night, my family didn't leave. My mom made dinner in my kitchen. My dad and I sat on the porch and drank whiskey, talking about his latest research and my newest project. Eleanor helped me box up the last few things Olivia had left behind. For the first time in my life, my two worlds, my family and my home, felt like they were one. The next day, I started taking back control. I'm not a vindictive person, but I am a practical one. Olivia had been a financial drain for years. I had paid off her student loans, covered her car payments, and funded her non-existent business. I had done it out of love, but now I saw it as a liability. I called my bank and separated our accounts. I removed her from my credit cards. I called the car dealership and informed them that I would no longer be making payments on the lease that was in my name. She would have to qualify for financing on her own. The call from her came 2 days later. She was furious. Her card had been declined at a high-end boutique. "What did you do, Ben?" she demanded. "I've secured my finances, Olivia," I said calmly. "Our arrangement is over. You wanted to be independent. Now you are. You can't just cut me off." She screamed, "I have expenses. Greg isn't going to pay for everything." And there it was, the first crack in her perfect new life. Greg, the slick real estate agent, was not the provider she had assumed he would be. "That sounds like a problem for you and Greg to solve," said. "My side of the street is clean." I hung up. My family has been my rock. My dad calls me every day. My sister has been helping me with the legal paperwork to ensure my business and my assets are protected. My mom just comes over sometimes with groceries. sometimes just to sit and talk. They are showing me with actions, not just words, that I am not alone. Olivia was so sure she knew my family. She saw their academic snobbery and mistook it for a lack of love. She thought they would be on her side, the side of sophistication and ambition. She never understood that blood is thicker than pretension. She made a fatal miscalculation. She tried to isolate me, and in doing so, she brought my family back to me, stronger than ever before. Update 2. The past 2 weeks have been a lesson in the rapid decay of a life built on a faulty foundation. While my own life has been filled with an unexpected warmth and reconnection, Olivia's has, from what I gather, completely imploded. Her life with Greg turned out to be nothing like the fantasy she had imagined. Greg was happy to have a beautiful, witty woman on his arm at parties, but he was not interested in funding her lifestyle. He was, by all accounts, incredibly cheap. He expected her to pay half the rent on his condo, half the bills, half of everything. The problem was Olivia had no income. Her consulting business was a fiction I had been subsidizing. The car was the next domino to fall. Without my payments, the leasing company came calling. She couldn't qualify for financing on her own. The sleek convertible she loved to be seen in was repossessed from the parking garage of Greg's condo building last week. The humiliation, I'm told, was profound. Her friends, the ones who had cheered her on as she left me, were suddenly scarce. They were part of her aspirational lifestyle. And without the money to fund lunches, shopping trips, and weekend getaways, she was no longer of any use to them. The final straw for Greg was the student loans, the ones I had paid off. What she didn't know was that I had paid the final lump sum with a check from my business account, and my sister, the lawyer, had drafted a formal document framing it as a personal loan from me to her with a repayment clause that would trigger if our relationship ended within 5 years. It was a contingency, a piece of legal protection Eleanor had insisted on. At the time, I thought it was unnecessary. Now I see the genius in it. My sister sent a formal demand letter to Olivia at Greg's address requesting the immediate repayment of the $48,000 loan. That apparently was the end of Greg. He wasn't just unwilling to pay her bills, he was terrified of being associated with her debts. He told her she was a financial train wreck and that she had a week to get her things out of his condo. She had nowhere to go. She had burned her bridges with her own family years ago over some financial dispute. Her friends were gone. She was broke, in debt, and about to be homeless. So she played the only card she thought she had left. She decided to go to my family. She must have rehearsed her speech the entire drive over to my parents' house in the suburbs. She had a story all worked out. I had become unstable. I had thrown her out for no reason. I was trying to ruin her financially. She was scared for me and for herself. She was going to appeal to their sense of propriety, to their desire to avoid a messy public drama. She was going to be the reasonable, sophisticated woman, and I was going to be the crazy blue-collar ex who had lost his mind. She was so sure they would take her side. She showed up on their doorstep last Saturday afternoon. I wasn't there. My dad had called me that morning and asked me to come for dinner, but to come a little later around 7. I didn't know why at the time. Now I do. He wanted to handle this himself. Final update. I'm writing this final update not because there's more drama to report, but because the story has found its proper ending. The dust has settled, and the new landscape of my life is clearer than ever. The scene at my parents' house that Saturday was the final crushing defeat for Olivia. She rang the doorbell and my father answered. He didn't invite her in. He just stood there, a solid, immovable presence in the doorway of the home he had lived in for 40 years. Olivia launched into her tearful, panicked performance. She told him I was acting erratically, that I had cut her off financially, that she was worried I was having some kind of breakdown. She begged him to intervene, to talk some sense into me. My father listened to her entire desperate speech without saying a word. His expression never changed. When she was finally finished, her voice choked with fake tears. He looked at her and his voice was cold and clear. "He is my son," he said, "and you hurt him. You mistook our family's complexities for a lack of love. You thought you could isolate him. You were wrong." Olivia was stunned into silence. This was not the reaction she had planned for. "He's not alone anymore, Olivia," my father continued. "We've got him. You are no longer his problem, and you are certainly not ours. Do not come to this house again. Enough. Do not contact any member of this family again. You are not welcome here." And then he closed the door in her face. That was it. Her final gambit had failed in the most spectacular way possible. She was left standing on the porch of the family she had tried to manipulate, completely and utterly alone. Her life since then has been a series of consequences. She had to move back to her hometown, a place she always claimed to despise. She's living in a small apartment above a garage, paid for by a reluctant aunt. She's working as a waitress. The glamorous life she felt she was entitled to has vanished, replaced by the harsh reality of her own choices. My life has been the opposite. My relationship with my family is a revelation. We are closer than we have ever been. My father and I talk every day, not just about work, but about life. My mother has been teaching me how to cook, something I never had the patience for before. My sister and I have become genuine friends. They see me now not as the blue-collar son, but as Ben, the man who builds things, the man who is strong and capable and kind. The revenge was never about destroying Olivia. It was about rebuilding myself. Her parting words were meant to be a curse, but they ended up being a gift. She said I would be alone forever, and her leaving was the very thing that brought my family back to me. She said no one would take my side, and she forced me to find the people who always had, even when I couldn't see it. Last weekend, my whole family came to my house for a barbecue. My dad and I stood on the deck I had built looking out over the yard. He put his hand on my shoulder. "You've built a good life here, son," he said. And for the first time, I knew he didn't just mean the house. He meant everything. I wasn't alone. I had my family. I had myself. And that was a foundation that no one could ever tear.